beans.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan Eastman, your host for round two of the FBA Draft, coming to you live from Las Vegas. Had an exciting night last night, and I'm sure we're in for even more fun surprises and storylines here. As we're going to kick it down to the stage, as Hugo Livingston is going to give a quick address to the fans, players, and staff that are attending tonight's event and watching in at home.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the second day of the 2021 FBA Basketball Association Draft. I am Hugo Livingston III, the Commissioner for the FBA, and I am so pleased to be continuing this event this afternoon. I want to thank everyone for last night's festivities and that everyone kept things to a relatively behaved appropriately for the monumentous event that is occurring. We hope that that will continue on into this afternoon. I also wish to express my luck to all those who are hopefully going to be or are looking to be drafted this afternoon. But I know that all of you are waiting very patiently for this event to continue, so I will not hold you any further. We'll begin shortly with the number 25 pick by the Pittsburgh Keystones. And remember that this afternoon there are only 3 minutes per pick to get your decisions in. Thank you.
And with that, we are off here. Round two is a go. And joining me in the booth once again for tonight, Marcus Baylor and Donovan Ritter. How are you both doing tonight?
Pretty well. It's good to be here. Excited to see what happens this afternoon here in Vegas.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see the pretty interesting and wild times and see how wild it can be as wild as it was last night, considering what has happened so far between the very first pick to even a little bit after the last pick of the first round. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen between what these next 3 minutes could be going on for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so for Pittsburgh, do you see them taking one of those top 24s that slid outside the first round? Looking at their team, obviously they're looking to bring back Tyrone Gale and Garland Ulysses. So maybe not going guard here, but after they traded away, especially considering they took Celia Boyce with their first round pick, that they would maybe go forward or big here. And looking at the available players left, I mean, Rebecca and Condori would fit that bill, I think.
Oh yeah, I have to agree 100%. I think going big here, considering that they traded two of their bigs last night, well, just even prior to the draft being started, is just like it was a little bit of a shock considering that they are pretty much that young depth that they've had for the Keystones, but they're trying to find a way to find some sort of push to finally get into those playoffs and maybe trying to reset that big fur group is something that it might be very necessary for them. So I won't be surprised if they do go big here with especially with two out of the three that were not able to that have slid down into the second round that was a part of that top 24.
Your thoughts, Donovan?
Yeah, very similar. Honestly, I think that that's a place that they have an opportunity to fill in, and I think at this point I think that you want to pull when you've got the opportunity to still pull those top 24 while they're available. They may have slid, but they were ranked that way because somebody saw something in them. There's definitely talent to be had there.
Yeah, and as last night, the Edmonton Totems had the first and third pick. Now we have Pittsburgh here rocking the 25th and 27th pick. So even if they don't necessarily pick a big here, I highly doubt Huntsville is going to also pick a big after they picked up CC having fallen to them in the first round. So I'm not going to say they have to pick. They could definitely go with a forward like Tindua or even start reaching into the non-cusp players like Avery Rathel, Irene Valier. And so there are options available to them, but I think I see the commissioner already being handed the envelope here.
That went quick.
For the number 25 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Pittsburgh Keystones have selected Rebecca Huatari, a center forward Badger from Thunder Bay Predator College. Congratulations to you, Rebecca, on being the number 25 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft and the first pick of this afternoon. I shall return for the next pick when the Huntsville Mayors have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they did go big here. Not necessarily a shocker, needing to find some depth at that position. So, congratulations, Rebecca. You are the first player of the second round picked, even though I'm sure you probably wish it had been yesterday that your name was pulled so you could have celebrated last night. But nonetheless, in the FBA now. Any thoughts on this pick before we jump into the Huntsville? And I know it's going to seem quick because 5 minutes versus 3 is a big difference.
It
Oh yeah,
is.
for sure. But I would have to say that really quick that it is not that much of a surprise and not much to really say here outside of like, well, she has an opportunity to be able to do a very to really show out and really prove the other teams that did not pick her in the first round that she is first round worthy here. And I think it could be a good opportunity and a good fit for them, especially considering that they want to try and revitalize that Big Fur group.
Mm-hmm. Donovan, anything you want to say before we jump in the Huntsville?
No, we were already saying I think that's a fairly standard and expected pick. So let's move on to Huntsville.
So for Huntsville, they picked up a surprise. CC after they traded back all the way to 8 was still available, so they managed to pick up arguably the second best center in the draft. Excuse me, let me clarify that. So I don't necessarily see them picking a center here. They still have that question at point guard. I mean, we talked last night about Kellendine and Wendy. Are they past their prime? Is it better for them to start looking? And in the second round, that's a good opportunity to start looking for a project player to develop.
Right.
And Gwyn or Tyler Rutterfield, two options there, and even Ali.
Darpino.
Yeah. So there's about 3 guards I could see them possibly picking here if they go that route, but they're a team in general that their forward is questionable as well right now. How many forwards they have already under contract is very little, with Darian Baptiste going in the free agency, Travis Buckner being a free agent, and Craig Reinhardt being a free agent as well.
Yeah, and a lot of those bigs haven't really gotten a lot of looks looks when it comes to free agency as well. So they could easily try and pick them up for a little bit of a lighter load, just to if they're interested in keeping that kind of depth. But I will still say that going for forward would not be a bad idea in this sense, especially considering that they don't really have a lot to play around with right now, and possibly developing that forward depth will probably be the most important. Because I do think that even though that Wendy is out of commission for a little bit, I would not be surprised if like she's ready to sweep back into action to go back into that starting role. How that affect her, we don't know. But I think at the end, I will feel like that since Travis Buckner is I'm heading out the door. I'm not sure whether or not he's actually going to be back. It won't be surprised if they go for that pick at forward.
Yep, and I think the commissioner's ready to announce that pick now.
For the 26th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Huntsville Mayors have selected Tyler Rutterfield, a guard American River Otter from Mustard University of Michigan. Congratulations to you, Tyler, on being the number 26 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Pittsburgh Keystones have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
So they did go the best available guard, Tyler Rutterfield, off the board now. leaving only, I believe, one top 24 left. That's Condori. See how long it takes for
Yes.
him to come off. Uh, but I feel like
And
we
he
all kind of
seems
agreed here. Guard would make sense.
it does. I'm curious to see how Tomas takes the news that he is at this point slipped this far. There were some stories about a bit of a temper during the combine. I think that might be perhaps why nobody has been quick to pick him up.
Yeah, he was also rated 24, and we're only on pick 26, so
It's
he's not
true.
slipped that far yet. When we get to
Yeah,
the
it's
30s, I'll be worried.
I mean, yeah, I think one of the big things when you look at this type of situation that I would, as someone who was ranked at the 24th spot, you kind of prepare yourself a little bit for not getting picked in the first round per se. So I wouldn't be really too surprised if he's probably won't be surprised if the first few teams will decide not to go for him. But he has a good prime opportunity to possibly get picked up from the team that we just talked about earlier in this start of the second round in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we're back already to Pittsburgh. See if they uh, they've already picked up a center. They don't necessarily need to grab another one here, which is why I think they're gonna maybe look at a backup guard just in case, a safety pick, or maybe even develop some depth with a swing fur.
Like you said, at this point, you're mostly looking at project players.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more just where do they feel like they need to develop the most. Swingfer makes sense given the other picks so far during this year's draft.
Yeah, like I said, if they intend to bring back Garland and Gale, there's a few options on the board I could see maybe going with, but at the same time, it's like okay, you're having to go a little bit deep. Obviously, we only have three on the cusp players and one top 24, so we can't really go based off of how the scouts rank them anymore at this point. Now,
Yeah,
my
it's just kind of. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would say that yeah, it's just really for the most part, it's just kind of a guessing game at this point of what teams will want to do here, because as many people have alluded to, this isn't the strongest class this year, so it's going to be hard to figure out like where certain players will be placed outside of simple draft needs at the right place at the right time.
And while this class was very strong in the top 24 with centers, looking at the rest of the class, we do see a bit of a lack of centers in the second round. I only see two besides uh, Thomas on the board, and that is Harper and Jason. Those two are the only centers available outside of the top 24. So we could see a situation where by pick 30, 35, there are no centers left in the draft. And that might encourage some teams to go ahead and pick one up now if they have multiple picks this draft.
They are
Yeah,
such a
it's
rare
the
commodity most years.
Yeah, for sure. And with one of those, it's not surprising that with the amount of big furs that were available this year, that they got picked up so quickly. But now it just comes into the play of whether or not teams will be willing to possibly trade up to go for these very few picks and centers, or they're just willing to go ahead and be like, you know what, there's probably a couple of more options here in free agency. Would rather risk having someone who has a little bit of veteran presence than just try and go for this kind of project.
Yes, and the pick is in.
For the number 27 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Pittsburgh Keystones have selected Wei Zing, forward guard red-shanked Duke from Thunder Bay Predator College. Congratulations to you, Wei, on being the number 27 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I shall return for the next pick when the Arizona Whips have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they went with the monkey as a swing for. It makes sense. We talked about maybe some swing for depth. Uh, if they are bringing back a guard, this does give them a little bit of coverage if they whiff on one of their two. But not a terrible idea to round out their draft as they've picked up a guard, a center, and now a swing for the pick.
And interestingly, Rebecca and Way both coming out of Thunder Bay.
Mm-hmm. Teammates, I mean, you have to hope there's some chemistry there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with familiarity. As I've known personally from my career, familiarity can be a really good thing for you as you start off your career in the FBA. And what better way to do it than with a former college teammate ended up being on the same team, while different expectations are there for both of them respectively. I still think that it could be a great opportunity for them to continue doing what they did well in college and in order to support each other, both physically and mentally.
Well, I think in your situation, you have to worry more about your brother telling embarrassing stories about you um,
Don't get
than.
me started.
Look, you brought it up. I'm just saying. Goodness. And oh, wow. A quick turnaround from the Arizona Whips. They're already got the pick in. Let's jump down to the stage.
Oh, wow.
Maybe. Oh, Commissioner's got a little lost on the way to the stage. So we'll keep talking. I see he has the pick in hand, but uh, I'm not 100% sure what Arizona is going to go with here. They could. Obviously, they picked up a center already. Sorry, not a center. They picked up a forward in Shayway. But oh nope, I see the commissioner now.
For the number 28 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Arizona Whips have selected Ali Darpino, guard hamster from Musselid University of Michigan. Congratulations to you, Ali, on being the number 28 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick after the Las Vegas Wildcards have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
An interesting pickup considering they already, as of last night, signed Jerome Swimmer, but maybe looking to round out that guard depth behind Dennis Summers. And I'm assuming either Swimmer's going to be the starting shooting guard or maybe Anari might slide over.
Well, I guess it really depends on whether or not they're going to pick up, I believe, Evan Cross, to return back to the Whips. I mean, it's a good opportunity for them to get a little bit quicker there, because that seems like one of the big things that I've looked at this team is that there isn't a lot of speed when you look at the Whips from what they have. So I'm not too surprised that they went with this route, especially with a player who knows how to pass the ball well too.
Yeah, going with a little bit more agility makes sense, especially if the our sources are coming through that they are pursuing multiple centers, potentially multiple big furs, as their main focus this offseason. But let's dive on over to Las Vegas now, who have the 29th overall pick. Their selection last night, made two actually in the first round. Yagori and Area, a guard and a forward. Have to wonder if they'll maybe go for a little bit of a center depth here, even though they did just re-sign Merriam Wallstein in free agency. So not necessarily a requirement in my opinion, but might be a good idea to pick up that top 24 that's still on the board.
Could be, but I could also see them looking at filling out their guard depth at
Yeah, I
this
would have to
point.
agree. Is that Yeah, I would agree with that. It's looking at the guard depth right now, they have some expectations of quite a few players coming back from what I've heard, but it wouldn't be too surprising if they really wanted to go ahead and add more because considering how guard heavy this league is nowadays, I would not be surprised if they want to try and get as much guard depth as they can to continue trying to, swamp out as they need to.
Do you think that means is they're done with the Dunphy sisters?
Uh, it could be a possibility, as we did have a little bit of a change up when it comes to the wild cards and what they have going on when it comes to their front office. But we don't know if they still have the same interest in the Dunphy sisters or not. They could possibly be able to be like willing to give another shot and see how things go from there.
I don't think that there had been any rumors about contracts coming through or offers.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to see what will come from that. I imagine that they'll want to stay together, possibly. I mean, Marcus, you can comment on, would you have rather stayed with Bobby for your career versus if an opportunity opened elsewhere, would you have taken it even if it meant splitting you two up?
Well, I think it really just depends on what are necessarily the needs for the family members because, there are some players who would love to try and, play for the same team together and really just show the powerhouse of the family name, or they could see each other as a rivalry thing. But considering the route that the Scissors have taken, they would like to stick together. But I guess it really just depends on how if they were more worthy of being as a dynamic duo or they want to outshine one another because competition can be a really big thing as well when it comes to these type of relations.
And I think I see this commissioner heading to stage now.
For the 29th pick, the 2021 FBA Basketball Association Draft, the Las Vegas Wildcards have selected Elliot Jordan, a guard cardinal from Claiborne University. Congratulations to you, Elliot, on being the 29th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. Next up is the Queen's Pride, followed by Texas. Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and bring in another guest commentator, Jeremiah Senta. How you doing, Jeremiah?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Uh,
I'm glad to be back behind the mic again.
any thoughts so far on the second round, the draft picks that have come off the board here?
Well, I don't see a whole lot of surprises the, on the second round so far, except for we still have one T24 player left on the board, but we had seen in the past some T24 players go quite down the draft order. So it happened before, but it's not very common.
You're right. I think I was a host for one or two of those where we saw them drop all the way down to the late 30s, and I think one even made it all the way to the 40s before being picked up. So Condori will have to just keep an eye out. I'm sure it's going to be an anxious wait as we go through the night. But now we have.
But
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, but you gotta imagine how much of a toll it'll take on that player's morale, especially.
Yeah, you would assume so, but we're moving on to the Queen's Pride next on the board. Now, this would be a great place, I feel like, for Condori to get picked up just because they have so many needs. Last night they tripled their roster size last night by signing Joseph Wolf and Kamori Anari, cousin to Kyler Anari, through the draft. So they have plenty of spots open still to fill.
The Queen is basically they have like almost a clean slate to choose from, especially since they only had one player from last season, like you said, and I think that this is the prime opportunity for the Queen to, to be able to have enough choices to be able to turn the team around. But it's still it's up to the general manager and it's up to the players that either want to return to Queens or seek elsewhere.
hmm I mean, they have a lot of flexibility with their free agency and their draft pick here, so might get a bit of a
Mm.
sense of how they're feeling their free agent offers are going based on what they pick up. I would be surprised if they went guard for their third pick, especially considering we still have some forwards and bigs on the board that might be better served to diversify their selections.
Well, the Seattle Summit had the same exact scenario a couple of years back, but I think the uh, the disadvantage that the Queens may face this time around is that there's no Delmar on the free agency.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the I believe the pick is in. Let's cut down to the stage where the commissioner will announce it.
For the number 30 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Queen's Pride have selected Jason Hartford, center forward Elk from Harvard University. Congratulations to you, Jason, on being the 30th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I'll return once Texas has confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Hmm.
Well,
They, so
Marcus.
they so they put a center forward. That's quite a reach comparison to what other bid first round. But according to the bid board I'm seeing here, there's only a few centers left.
Only one other than
Yeah, there
Kondori.
is.
That's
Only
that's
Yeah, and
Harper. So
yeah, that's really been a little bit of a surprise.
I was gonna say, Marcus, your thoughts on how long do you think it'll take before both these centers are off the board? We're at the 30th pick here, and then we have two left, and there's 18 picks left to go.
I wouldn't say it'd be too long, to be honest with you. It depends on really how desperate some of these teams are. I mean, Queens would have been a really prime spot for me, to be honest, for someone like Tomas's capabilities to be picked up there. I mean, sure he does have a little bit of aggression, just the worry about that. But I would say that no later than possibly the mid 30s, maybe 35 or 36 could be the possibility where we might see all of the centers get picked up, but it's a wait and see for this one.
Now let's dive on into Texas. They made two picks last night. They picked up Emily Jackson, the forward, Adam Coate, the frog, at Big Fur. So now we have just missing the guard to complete the collection. Which, looking at the big board, we do have a few options: Gwyn, Haas, and then a medley of guards in the not top 24 and non-cusp that could fill out the bench. It's just a question of, does Texas capitalize on the opportunity to grab a not on the cusp player, or maybe do they continue to add to their center depth and grab Kondori here?
Well, I would have to say that when it comes to being a former big for myself, having that kind of size is not too bad. And plus with the fact that having a top 24 player still on the map, I think it'd be a good opportunity to try and jump onto it. I mean, of course, having falling all the way down into the 31, well, it is unfortunate for a player like this of his caliber to go down that far, which it has happened before. I still think that taking that opportunity and making it a little bit of a steal would be suffice for Texas.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I think the further down, if they if they still have a pit them, then the further down it may be more of a skill, but it depends on the needs. I think by this point in the second round, it's more towards a need on filling in the gap, so to speak, rather than going for a player that would automatically become a starter.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has had good luck picking those kind of players. Though, look at Marcus Knight. You look at their most recent, Lucy Joe Heitkamp. You know, a player that they picked up second round who became a starter for them. So Texas has a great foresight with the players they pick, and I think the commissioner's ready to make the next announcement.
For the number 31 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Texas has selected Harper Kegel Shufflebottom, a forward center Motley Golden Child Reticulated Python from Boston, Massachusetts. Congratulations to you, Harper, on being the 31st pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return once the Lorraine Firestorm have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Oh
Well,
my
Shuffle bottom.
goodness. Okay.
Shuffle bottom.
they they went
Wow.
with the
That
center, but not the one we expected.
wow.
Yep. They went with shuffle bottom.
Marcus, for the love of God, do not get started.
Wow.
Bro, you have no idea how excited I am to say shuffle bottom going down with the G.
What? I
Please save me. Please save me.
Oh gosh, you're gonna hate me when it comes to commentary when he goes back to the sports dens. Oh my lord. You better hope I'm not on Texas.
You mean
On a
I'm gonna
Texas-
schedule you not on Texas? So Jeremiah, any thought on this before we move on to Lorraine?
my brain is frozen like my Harding Armadillo shell right now. What? I'm literally speechless.
Well, let's transfer over then to the Lorraine Firestorm, who made that huge trade.
Oh my goodness.
Marcus, you can talk a little bit about the King's ransom they paid to acquire the second overall pick, and just
Yeah. Uh yeah, well they traded their original pick of this year, which it was the eighth overall pick. They traded their first round pick for next year, and they gave up 5 million in this year's cap as well in order to be able to go all the way to the second overall pick and to get Teresa. Well, I think that Teresa is very high regard with the best guard available, with obviously the choice to replace the now retired Akiak Pratt. There's going to be a lot of questions as to is all of this really worth it, especially considering the fact that they're not a team um that is still trying to find that perfect mold to be a playoff contender this year.
Well, there's one thing that they did draft a guard like Teresa, and she's very highly viable. But they're also trying to lure back Alicia Silverman from the free agency. So I'm not sure how if they're able to fit both of them into starting position or not. I'm not too sure. But I'm not the coach for Lorraine, so I can't really say anything for that.
and they have a lot of options they need to fill out. Honestly, I mean they're trying to bring back Tyreek Kendrick. Uh, how successful they will be in that endeavor, I'm gonna keep saying Condori. Get the llama, backup safety. It works. So
Yeah, it's I think it's a pretty good possibility to go big, but considering how things have been going so far, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to be jumping on that.
yeah, it's a rough one. I think in the end, no matter how you look at it, they are trying to be competitive again. They've hovered around that lottery slash sixth to eighth seed in their conference, so they just haven't been able to find that star. That's been one of the factors holding them back. Is outside of Edwin, who you remember retired due to some injury concerns and then came back. So technically he was drafted by them, but he took a year off. They haven't had a really successful draft pick. Uh, Tyreek has been their most successful in recent memory, and Anika, she's showing some promise, but we'll have to see how she does at her sophomore year.
Yeah, and this is a very young team with a lot of growing pains. It's going to be interesting how they really want to set things up. I do think that Alicia Silverman's going to take a step back and be more of a six for player by how things are going with them, especially with the fact that they got Tyrese. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa.
So yeah, Teresa. So for me, I just think that like when it comes to what Lorraine really needs to do, I wouldn't be surprised if they really try to go uh just simply for depth positions, which of course let us going back into Tomas, possibly getting picked here. We've been harping on it for a little while. He has an opportunity to be a steal for any kind of player. He is ranked on the top 24 for a reason, but you never know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yep, I think the pick is in. Let's jump down to the stage.
For the 32nd pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Wolverine Firestorm have selected Shalini Aziz, power forward, albino spectacled Cobra from Chicago Bay. Congratulations to you, Shalini, on being the number 32 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. A return for the next pick after the Dakota Bikers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, 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 they went forward here.
Interesting.
Not a terrible selection.
Uh,
Well,
well,
what forward did Lorraine already have in the team so far? Let's see. They got Campo and another one. I don't know. My, I'm still a little bit flabbergasted about
The previous.
I
Thomas not being picked yet, but
Yeah, I mean it's a blank slate, and the one thing that I know Shalini does have is that the jumping ability is there for Shalini, and I'm sure that like this is definitely a project player more so someone who you would rather try and learn from the few minutes it can get off and on the bench, just to really kind of work them out a little bit, but. Other than that, I can't really say there really is much. I definitely would have preferred Tomas here comparing to Shalini, but we'll see how things go. I could be wrong.
And let's jump on over to the Dakota Bikers. Had no first round pick this year, but now having their first selection. Looking at their starting lineup, they have the majority of that set, it seems like. I don't see them, obviously.
well, uh, I'm I'm pretty sure they're gonna go for either a guard or forward. They already have Derby, and they just signed back the Firen, so
Mhm.
that's already two pure centers in Dakota. So I have a feeling they're gonna go that Dakota is gonna go for a guard or a forward.
Unless they want to go, deep bench and have a third center prepared to step in. Obviously, Mishima can play the center position, but he specializes more in the forward role. So, again, if Condori is still here on the board at this point, why not go ahead and take him and, either try and develop him or maybe even use him as a trade potential? Uh,
Yeah, and it could be a possibility that if a couple of if they decide to move on from Mishima, because Mishima's on his last year of his contract, to probably battle it up with Xavier if they wanted to see if they can go for that power forward spot.
happen. I think to see the commissioner heading to stage now with the pick selection.
For the 33rd pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Dakota Bikers have selected Jarrett Tendua, a forward Black Panther, University of Virginia Anthro. Congratulations to you, Jarrett, on being the number 33 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. Next up will be the Seattle Summit, followed by the Tallahassee Typhoons. Thank you.
Well, they did go forward and definitely has the athleticism and size to play at power forward. Uh, so not a terrible shock there, especially since they have a number of forwards going into free agency. I think Marshall Anderson Rhodes is a free agent this year, I believe. So they might be trying to replace one cat with another. No, sorry, next year's Anderson Rhodes. Samuel Pangolian Jr. was who I was thinking of. Is heading in free agency, who's a forward.
Yeah, I mean for a majority of it, their roster is just about set. Like I don't think I expect much movement for Dakota, especially considering how close they were to the championship last year. Uh, Unfortunately getting fallen off. Was it the second round? I believe it was the
Yeah, they
second
got knocked
round.
out in the second round. They made it to
Uh,
the first.
yeah, so they So they still have some kinks to really fall out, but of course they still have a lot of major pieces that helped them win a championship a few years ago. So it won't be too surprising that they won't go for some kind of big splash here. Just trying to find a way to continue trying to build that depth.
Yep, and speaking of building some depth, over to Seattle Summit, a team that their cap space, they're having to play with what they can. They're looking to acquire a power forward in the free agency, it seems like. Last night they took a speedy guard and Atios out of Greece. So you have to imagine maybe they go and build a little bit of depth at the forward position, whether or not through the Llama or another non-top 24 center. Oh, actually, there are no centers left besides Tandori. Forward, perhaps.
Yeah, the yeah, Condor is the only one left when it comes to the center position, and I wouldn't be too surprised if they want to go for that route. Like we already know that Leon and Blake, they're the 1-2 punch, and I believe they could decide whether or not. I'm not sure if they're interested in bringing Zoe Wilds back just to go ahead and continue having at least a solid player to be a six uh for now, but there's definitely plenty of options they can go with.
You're pretty certain that they're finally they'll put the last center in the draft before. I think they get the finally the time for it.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to grab one here looking at their players on the bench. I mean, Tanner Muldoon is their backup. They have the Duck, Christina Ackerman. So they do have two centers already on the bench. So they don't necessarily have to pick one here, but it never hurts to build a little bit more depth in that role. And if not, they already picked up a speedy kind of guard, so I could see them going forward just to help. I feel like ATOS is going to end up being their sixth for being a bit of a change of pace with his 3 point shooting. So they'll want to give him some significant minutes compared to, Zoe Wilds really kind of was the same, just was a plug and play essentially for Delmont or Blake, similar play styles there. But they could go for another, 3 point shooter here and add another uh, off tempo piece from what their normal style is. So you wait for the pick to come in. Anyone left on the board that you have your eye on, even if we don't think Seattle's going to take them here? Besides Condori, we've already talked about
If they
Condori.
Yeah, if we if there if Condori isn't somebody that you can really look at, there is also a player who, while a lot of people don't really look at this side of the ball, I think defense can be pretty important. Carell is a player that does speak that. They have, from what I've seen, they have some of the best defensive prowess out of all the players so far in the league. And I think it's something that for some good team could look into to not only have that, of course, having those wing furs is very, very important for a lot of these teams, but also someone who can probably hold the fort down as well.
Yeah,
I think
and I was going to say, I think the pick is in, so we'll cut down to the
sorry.
stage.
I think if they're looking for a guard, well, we have Gwen Hoff, who's still up there on the board, along with Aiden Collins and David Cartwright. But if they're going to go for a swing for, then I'll print maybe Boya Perkins.
Yep, and let's hear what the commissioner has to say. He has the pick in hand now.
For the 34th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Seattle Summit have selected Kieran Reese, guard forward Red Panda from Southwestern State University. Congratulations to you, Kieran, on being the 34th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick once the Tallahassee Typhoons have confirmed their selection.
Well, they did go swing fur, so they kind of address both areas without going towards the big side, but uh, not a terrible surprise filling out the role on the bench for now. Leaves an opening for potentially going back to Zoe Wilds if they choose to. Any thoughts before we dive on into the Tallahassee Typhoons?
Uh, no, I I'm good.
No worries. So let's
well,
go ahead.
Tallahassee, Tallahassee only has, from what I'm looking at here, Tallahassee only has 3 spots left in their roster to fill.
Mm-hmm. They didn't really have much of a free agent class this year, and the fact they already picked up a center in
Yeah,
Kevin Oakley, they really don't need to pick Condori here, so they could go with a player like Gwen
yeah.
Haas. And you mentioned her last pick. Picking up a guard would not be a terrible idea here, especially one that was rated on the cusp. Might be a viable pickup to back up Redmayne.
I think it really just
Yeah,
depends on whether or not. Oh, sorry about that.
sorry.
Uh, yeah, it's
Oh,
cool.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I would say that I think it really just depends on whether or not they want to jump back on the train on D'Angelo McCulkin. I mean, as you know, when it comes to a player like D-Mac, as I would like to call him, uh, he is one of the more defensive juggernauts. But considering that he is getting up there in age, it's just seeing like how much are they willing to try and keep him around, especially since they went for that trade for him a couple of years back.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's
I
interesting. Go ahead.
okay. I don't think they're gonna pick a center this time because they already have Boot, McLeod, and Hartnett. So I don't think they're gonna pick another center. I think they're gonna pick a guard this time.
Yep, and the pick is already in. They knew who exactly they wanted, so let's head down to the commissioner, see what he has to say.
For the number 35 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Tallahassee Typhoons have selected Gwen Haas, a guard koi dog from Oxnard, California. Congratulations to Gwen on being the 35th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return once the Albany Alphas have taken their pick, followed by the Williamsburg Minutemen. Thank you.
Oh, they did go guard, which brings in some questions if they're going to bring back McCulkin, even though it's a completely different body build between the two. So he plays more of a almost small forward role compared to Gwen, who's a lot faster and plays a lot more like uh, the Buffalo does. So not a terrible idea to pick up a backup here.
It could be just
Yeah,
the idea of having similar in style is pretty important to have. So having somebody, and plus she's younger too, compared to Redmayne as well.
yeah. And hey, Tallahassee. I think Tallahassee would be good for Gwen Haas. Mm, I think she can probably. I think they have good weather for grow a lot of avocado there. Who knows?
I mean, the weather's good for her down there, but let's jump into Albany and see, what our thoughts are on them. They picked up Tanner Hunt last night with their first round selection. So, who do they look at here now that Gwen Haas is off the board? Uh, I kind of figured they may have gone for a backup guard if she had fallen this far, but questions remain now, especially with Condori on the board, if they want to go for a center, even though they picked a power forward in the 12th pick earlier.
Well, when it comes to that, I think that the more depth, the merrier when it comes to the big when it comes to all the big furs. So it's going to be interesting if they really do want to go for that route. I mean, Albany is more of the ground and pound team as of late. So going for another player like that wouldn't hurt for them, especially in a place like Albany.
Anyone on the
Yeah,
board you're eyeing, Jeremiah?
uh, Well, if they decide to pick a guide, then I'm pretty sure that person will have the advantage of having a the defending having a league MVP sorry to mentor her or him, and um but I'm thinking that they will probably end up picking a forward this time.
Yep, and I think the pick is in. Let's jump down to the stage where the commissioner is.
For the number 36 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Albany Alphas have selected Avery Rethel, a forward lion from Ottawa, Ontario. Congratulations to you, Avery, on being the number 36 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. Next up is the Williamsburg Minutemen, followed by the Alaska Arctics. Thank you.
So they did go forward, adding a little bit of depth behind Kivar and Terry O'Toole. So not a lot I feel like there's can be talked about there. It's not a surprising pick necessarily, even though you do wonder with Narkissa being on her last year if they really are gambling on potentially bringing in a free agent to replace her next year, or maybe even lining one up this year. But let's.
Well, there are plenty of possibilities there.
There are quite a few options to be had, especially we'll have next year in free agency we'll have last year's draft class entering the fray. So, but let's jump into Williamsburg. You know, a team that never changes. Sometimes it seems like they picked up Jack Baker last night. They grabbed a center while they could. I don't see them with how few roster slots they have, them picking another center here just because they need. I feel like the players that are heading to free agency are a swing and a forward. So you'd almost feel like they'd have to pick a forward here to replace one of those two.
Yeah, and I would say even though this is kind of a little bit of a minor detail, they do have to be a little bit careful considering about what species they select next, because they are a little bit at risk for with multiple species it seems when it comes to the Underwood rule.
The
So
cat
it
and the
will be
dog.
interesting to see how they Yeah. So there's a little bit of a there is a little bit of concern in that regard if they decide to go for a player of that caliber of going for it comes species wise because we do want to keep everything diverse. We don't have too many of the same um similar species in a way. So it's going to be interesting what they want to decide to do here.
Pick cat dog. Break both rules. Make it so you get a double Underwood violation. Oh, that'd be horrible to try and solve because if they weren't able to
Boy.
break the Underwood violation by start of the season, they would be disqualified from the playoffs, which we haven't had in a number of years. But yeah, you have to. That's something a GM has to keep in mind when they're going into the draft, especially if they're playing close with four species. You know, it can be very easy to forget and pick up two of the same and violate the rule. But they've treaded the line for a little while now. They know that they're at a position they can't afford to violate that rule, especially with Vieira, you know, coming into her 12th season now. Not many seasons, I'd argue, left with her at peak condition. If they want to win another ring with her, they need to do it while they can. As we wait for the pick to come in, I'm trying to look at the available players left on the board who might be a problem if they did not pay attention to who they selected.
Yeah, that's something to really look into. I think one of the just being able to go through from player to player. I mean, they can go to a lot of options here. Like, I'm not entirely sure if like you just being like, hey, we just picking a random name could be too much of a risk. But I don't want that to be like the big main harp here, considering the fact that yeah, even though they don't have a lot of roster spots left in the first place, anyways, it's going to be interesting if they want to try and see if they can uh use it to possibly just, have someone to kind of train up a little bit as they go throughout their career because I don't know if that's going to be the long term for them, especially this late in the draft.
Yeah, but I think the pick is in. Let's jump down to the commissioner.
For the 37th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Williamsburg Minutemen have selected Aaron Valier, forward rabbit from Heritage River Riparian College. Congratulations to you, Aaron, on being the 37th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. Next up are the Alaska Arctics, followed by the Montana Howlers. Thank you.
Well, they avoided the problem by picking the rabbit, and they addressed their forward
Yes.
position that is becoming open. I'm assuming she'll replace Chantel potentially, but I feel like they might want to bring back Magnano, so might be the replacement for Adawaski Fletcher if he ends up going into free agency full. But
Yep, that could be a possibility.
any thoughts, Jeremiah, on this pick, or thoughts on Alaska as we're heading over to them next?
My apologies for going quiet.
No worries.
My 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 sister is texting me, even though I told her not to bother me. But uh,
Don't worry. Let's jump into the Arctics then, Marcus. Last night they picked up Hamish Moist, the swing fur. They still, obviously in free agency, have to deal with Okayu and hoping to bring him back. This is the point of, okay, do they gamble and take Kondori just in case they don't get Ogun back? But does that maybe discourage the Rhino from returning, thinking that the team doesn't trust him to return?
Um, Honestly, considering how far he has dropped, I would say that why not go ahead and go for that big fur? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone is expecting for Ogun Akayu to have any kind of competition for his center position. I mean, sure, the uh Tomas would think that he probably has a shot, but I think everybody in and their mother would know that there's no way they're going to let Ogun Akayu just like sit behind somebody at any point, considering how well he has done in his career.
Hmm. And I do think the commissioner is ready to take the stage.
For the number 38 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Alaska Arctics have selected Brian Rudolph, power forward beaver from Appalachian Mammal College. Congratulations to you, Brian, on being the 38th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. They'll return for the next pick once the Montana Howlers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Oh, they did go big, but they left it at power forward, bringing the Beaver into Alaska. Any thoughts, Jeremiah, before we send you off for the night?
well, it's it's still a bit surprised because uh, I was thinking that they were going to pick a guard or at least a small forward, but I'm I'm not too disappointed about this pick. This, I think O'Brien could do well as a backup for power forward.
Yeah, definitely not a bad pick grabbing a power forward here just in case. Also considering that, yeah, they have Mark Guerrera, who in theory could slide over to center if they absolutely had to. But I think it's been wonderful having you, Jeremiah. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, talking with you, and uh, oh, I'm sorry, forgot your name again. Sorry.
Marcus Baylor and Ryan Eastman.
Right,
Marcus.
Marcus. Sorry, my it's been a long trip to get here. Sorry, but
Hey, I'm
I
sure you're
want,
tired.
yeah, very much. Uh, Thank you both for having. having me here, and good luck to all these draftees to get to the new teams, and hopefully they'll help them get to a championship someday.
And with that, we're gonna bring back on Donovan Ritter. Donovan,
There.
any thoughts on what's transpired since you were last on?
In all of my conversations, no one is at all sure what the deal with Condori is. At this point, I feel like there's something in his background that someone should know because he's being avoided like the plague. And
I
no one
mean,
seems to know
llamas.
what it is.
Do llamas spit like camels?
I'm uncertain and suspect they would consider that a stereotype.
I don't know. Maybe he spat in someone's eye.
Maybe something
You don't
happened
know.
during the combine we didn't hear about, but there's just no, play-based reason that I can see he'd still be on the board at this point.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
Let's jump into Montana though and talk about they picked up Andy Roth with their first pick in the draft. Now, what do they do here? We talked about whether or not they'd bring back Ren and Nue. Thoughts that maybe they'll be looking for a project player here at guard. You know,
it could be a possibility. Um, when it comes down to it, they are. I don't know. Let me make sure to see that. I think that their big for depth is still down in pack. They could just consider whether or not they would want to bring back Blancmange if they wanted to, but of course, that would be at risk of the Underwood rule because they're under that as well with since they hit their limit too. But I think that at the end, he has to get picked up at some point, right? I can't imagine for Tomas to really hit in the 40s because now it's becoming very, very worrisome.
I, like I said, something more is transpiring here that we clearly don't have. I was hoping and wandering around down there I might hear whatever the rumor mill is saying, and there are plenty of stories, but none of them match. It just feels like the the GMs are hesitant on him for something.
You feel like it's a conspiracy theory or something?
I'm trying to not sound like it's a
the
conspiracy
llama
theory, but
is
what do you
too
make of
beautiful.
that? How do you make sense of that when there are so many teams that could have used a pure center and he's sitting there, performed well in the combine, and nobody's willing to touch him? Like there are few explanations that don't sound like I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Well, I mean, it depends because, some teams have hosted interviews and maybe some of the interviews didn't really go well. And as we know in this business, people talk. People do talk. Sure, we kind of keep things under wraps for some times, making sure that they don't let their plans spoiled from anybody else. But there are times where they have, buddies from out throughout the league to be a little bit worried about what a player has done during the interview. I've said something that could be out of bounds.
I have to imagine something like that happened.
Marcus says as he prepares to write a tell-all book about his time in the league and what he heard.
What I
Hey,
heard.
you never know.
I mean, let's not have you put on the ban list of everywhere, but I think the commissioner is ready to take the selection to the stage.
For the 39th pick of the 2020 FBA Draft, Montana Howlers have selected Kira Yamashita, a guard Arctic Fox from Thunder Bay Predatory locality. Congratulations to you, Kira, on being the number 39 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Las Vegas Wildcards have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they did go guard in the end. Not a terrible surprise, as mentioning that Renanue. There are questions in the air about his continued service in Montana. Building a project
Yeah.
player, even though last year they did take two point guards as well, or at least a point guard, shooting guard, in Tyreek Murphy and Gilliam Fortier. So they're trying to find a successor, it seems.
Yeah, I guess they're not solid on either of the picks from last year as that person yet.
Hmm. Oh, and the commissioner is coming back to the stage already.
Oh wow. Does he have a no card that I see?
Hello, everyone. There has been trade. The Las Vegas Wildcards have just sent Casey Rux and their number 40 pick in return for Thor Einar Lynn. So it is now Edmonton's turn to get their selection before the clock runs out. Thank you.
Well, a trade back into the draft. The Edmonton Totems pulling the trigger here. They had the first and third overall pick, and we thought that was all we were going to see for them, but apparently their draft board is a little bit longer than we expected. I'm wondering what they
They
are seeing that's left up there. Maybe Condori?
I mean, it's a
possibly
good possibility.
they did just re-sign Naran Penichkul though, so
They did. That is
and
a
they
good point.
drafted Xavier. I don't see why they would need another center at this point.
Competition.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe.
it could be great. It could be a great opportunity to really go deep here as there are some questions for even though Bo Deppelbaum has a couple of years left on his deal, I don't know if this is going to be essentially his peak. So to speak. He has done serviceable things, but they could be looking to possibly move somebody for the power forward spot. You never know. And this could be an opportunity to do it when we have this one player, Tomas, who has been voting very patiently to get picked up. We'll see how things go in this case.
Yeah, but
Yes.
maybe a forward is a better fit for him right now for Bo and Baxter, though he's still got several years, I would imagine.
Hmm.
And I do see the commissioner ready to take the stage already. It looks like Edmonton had no need to debate on it.
Well, they knew what they wanted.
Let's see who it is.
For the number 40 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Edmonton Totems have selected Lawrence Carroll, forward guard Gila Monster from Florida Everglades. Congratulations to you, Lawrence, on being the 40th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I'll return for the next pick when the Seattle Summit have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Oh, come on.
They picked the Gila monster to
To
go
go
to
to
Edmonton.
Edmonton,
I mean, I
he's
know
gonna have a time.
I know teams now have great facilities that can accommodate these players, but you have to imagine Lawrence is not going to have a summer home in Edmonton, probably.
Oh my goodness.
But they
Well,
did.
I mean,
They
this
went for depth.
they did. And to look at back ending, Lawrence has a pretty good defensive prowess, as I mentioned earlier in this draft. So, and there aren't really a lot of defensive minded players on the squad right now for Edmonton. So that could be something that they can work around with.
It's true.
Yeah, and I mean, they picked a point guard. They picked a center. It makes sense they go somewhere in between for the third pick that they just acquired. So they obviously didn't replace Thor with a forward, which is what I was expecting. But in the end, we'll just have to see how much this is worth it. They took on Casey Rux, a player who arguably is just a salary dump at this point in terms of his skill. And with $6 million, that is a hefty dump of a contract, even though it is only 1 year. So it will at least clear by the time that Edmonton has to worry about bringing back, Zachary Cooper and Baxter Buckley. But final thoughts on that before we jump over to Seattle, who has another pick here?
I
Oh,
think
it's
really
reasonable.
it's just
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty reasonable. I think the only thing that makes it a little bit more challenging is to see if there are any other players that are looking to pick up for the off season this year via free agency. We'll see how well they can do it end up being in a couple of bidding wars if uh as things start settling down from like the top players so far in that free agency class.
It's not the worst thing, but let's jump into Seattle real quick because they have only less than a minute to get their pick in. Uh, this is their third selection so far, and they've already picked a guard. They picked up a guard and a swing for now. So do they finally go for that forward depth here at the 41st pick?
I mean, I think
Possibly.
you don't want to go too far on the same position in the draft when you have somehow managed to pick up a third or fourth pick for the year.
Yeah.
So I think spreading it around makes more sense position wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say they do have two centers on their bench, so they don't necessarily have to pick up Condori here if they are concerned about him. Uh, so we'll have to see. As I do see the commissioner heading to the stage with the pick now.
For the 41st pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Seattle Summit have selected Leaf Ormsby, a small forward skunk from Underwood College. Congratulations to you, Leaf, on being the 41st pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. I will return for the next pick when the Santa Ana Spectrums have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
So they did go forward. Not a terrible surprise there, even though a little undersized, a small forward definitely. Uh, Not going to be a big fur in the post, but rounding out the rest of their depth here tonight.
I
Mhm.
think that was their focus with most of their picks, really.
Yeah, it's trying to go for that depth, even though they do have a pretty well, that's more so for the other team that's coming up next, which could be it. It could be the pick, maybe. You never know. But yeah, Seattle has an opportunity to try and continue doing what they need to do because there's not much that you can really change so far with what they have left in their when it comes to their rosters. They still have a few slots to fill, but not a lot to really spend so far. So it's gonna be interesting what they're going to do here.
Yeah, and I would go center too, but they just picked piece, so they don't necessarily need to.
Ondori, they really don't.
They don't know.
But the depth is the question. I mean, they have Carroll as the backup center, but after that they have no one. So Viking, sorry, I take that back. Viking Lagerstrom is also a big fur. So they have not necessarily the demanding need for a center. They kind of just get to pick what they want here, who they like the most. Again, we get to this point of the draft, and normally there isn't a top 24 still available. So
There
Yeah.
isn't. It's just like I think the more the merrier because Tyrese Vaughn is a very, very difficult player to like fill in for. So maybe probably having this be a center by committee wouldn't be too bad of an idea, just to give a little bit of a load off of piece. But you never know in this case.
yeah, and I don't blame them if they just draft for maybe even going for some more point guard depth. Yeah, they just picked up Aquino, and London is a free agent, which might be who they're trying to replace potentially here.
I
Yeah,
really think
it's
at
gonna
this
be
point,
interesting.
yeah, I think at this point it's all about who stood out to you in interviews, who stood
Hmm.
out to you on the court. I think you're playing personality here more than specific stats.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's just really being able to see what best fits what you're trying to go with more as well. So, it just really depends on what they think is best fitting for this team. It could be having that as deep as a big for depth as you can, if you're Santa Ana, or it could possibly be looking into continuing trying to cycle into some guards because they've known how to pick a lot of very good guards throughout the years, even um, from the previous regime as well. They've just continued knowing how to pick up guards throughout these years.
And I do see the pick has come in. We'll head down to the commissioner now.
For the number 42 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Santa Ana Spectrums have selected Rhea Perkins, forward guard Zors from Equine Heights Academy. Congratulations to Freya on being the 42nd pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. The return once the pick from Hawaii has been confirmed. Thank you.
The Zorse is off the board.
Yeah.
Almost, actually, that might be a little disorientating with Santa Ana's jerseys with the stripes on it. I mean, I know it's not that close considering the black and white stripes compared to the gray and white, but still. But again, filling out depth, going for the swing for not a surprise there, especially if they are looking to possibly replace London or another one of those deep reserves players. But any thoughts on that before we switch on over to Hawaii?
I don't think there's really is much to say on this one. Again, it's a lot of the guard depth that needs to get filled out, and they just felt that was the best opportunity for them.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of guard depth, that is the majority of what is left.
Indeed.
I'm actually looking at it. We only have one forward on the board still. And that is...
One forward.
Yeah, one forward, a center, and nothing but guards. So, I think we're going to see some guards coming off the board soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is where the guards get filled up pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, you just don't have a lot of other choices. So,
I mean, what if
the
you just
danger of being
refuse?
late in the draft.
Can you refuse to draft?
I believe
Um,
I believe the teams are contractually required to take their pick.
They have to. They got to fill out their roster some type of way, unless they want to try and trade away to another team for scrap. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure if it hasn't happened, but I think if they wanted to, they could just not pick and it gets passed to the next team. And if no team picks, we might be here forever. They just
Ooh,
all refuse
it'd
to
be
pick.
like a quick hot potato.
And that's I
It'd
feel
be
like
like,
it's
hey,
almost it's awful to
I mean,
say
it would
that
be.
though. I mean, we're joking about it, but these are talented players too.
They
These
are.
are still some of the top, 50 players this year. These are not untalented people.
Marcus,
we're
go
joking
show them how it's done. Go play basketball. You've only been retired for what, 7 years
Oh,
now?
no. I think I'm good on that regard. It's.
Please
I
don't blow
think
your knees
I
out.
enjoy my time here in the booth. I think my knees have kind of had its time here. Thank
They've
you.
atrophied a bit since being on the bench.
Yeah, and I've gained a few pounds, I believe, since the last time I put on a jersey and went back on the court. So I think I'm pretty good on
Just
that
put on
regard.
Bobby's
And
jersey. You're
trying
fine.
to.
It says Baylor on the back.
Nobody will know the difference.
Hey, what was that supposed to mean?
We'll just put you next to DQ. Even Bobby next to DQ looked small, so no one can tell.
Fair.
Oh, and I do believe the pick is in. Let's head on down to the commissioner.
For the number 43 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Hawaii has selected Aiden Collins, a guard fellow dealer from Dublin Harps. Congratulations to Aiden on being the 43rd pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. A return for the next pick once the Banker Tides have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, there's the guard. The last forward and last center survive another pick.
Another round.
Any FBL player being picked up here, bit undersized, but heading to a team that actually there is a question about who will be their starting point guard next year. Yona Vastenhout up for free agency, as is Tay Delgado. They really don't necessarily have a point guard immediately looking to replace them, but I'd have to imagine that they're going to get something in free agency. They wouldn't put a 43rd overall pick in as a starter, I'd hope, of a team that's competing for
No, you imagine not. But
I really hope that's not the case.
but the interesting thing is, I don't think we've heard through the rumor mill of any contract offers for Jonah going out or Tay.
I've heard
from
Tay
them.
has gone out. I have heard
Okay.
they're in discussion with Tay, but he coming off the bench has not been a starter yet, so that's a big question. Do you put one of your sixth, seventh bench players, essentially promoting him to starting role? I mean, it may be because of cost saving measures because of Yona surely will require a fair bit of money to come back, and Hawaii has tied up a lot of their cap in their starters, so
It's true.
this
Yeah,
might
it's
be
a huge
a
risk.
backup that they needed to get eventually. So I mean, thankfully there are 1,000 guards left, so they had their pick of the litter. So
Yeah.
well, let's jump on over to the Bangor Tides. They were involved in that massive trade and sign and trade that brought Tyrese Vaughn over, and
Ooh,
you kind of already talked a little about my
you
thoughts
had
on the.
plenty of words.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you
an
had plenty of
expensive
words.
contract. 16 million. Obviously, they have a lot of money tied up in their starters, so the question is, okay, can they afford to bring Ash back? So I imagine they're going to pick a guard here potentially to uh, help provide some backup
Mhm.
to Lance retiring, and they're going to be shoving in, I'm assuming, McDonald Rainbow as the starter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the best case scenario for them is to pretty much put is to do what they intended to do last year is be able to try Andrew out in that starting position and see how well he's able to get things done. I know that like it is a question of how much are they willing to spend on Ash Van Zant considering this major pickup from Tyrese. But now it's going to be interesting on how they're going to try and fill up the rest of the roster also, because the more you try and throw money at Zant, the less quality players you're going to have available with the amount of cap that you have if you're the Bengal Tides.
Yeah, and just looking at it, I mean, they can get away with picking a forward here, I feel like, just because they do maybe want some depth there. I don't think they're going to try and bring back Tia Terra to put her at power forward. That could be an interesting option, but that would mean Desdemona gets demoted to the bench again, or maybe even traded to create cap space. Like I said, they have options, but it's pretty much between the Llama, who's going to be a bench player, but they already took Coates, so they don't really need another center here. They could take the forward, or one of the six remaining guards, or however many are left, and I guess you could play eeny, meeny, miny, mo about which one you like the best from the combine or the interviews.
Yeah, I would say that guard's probably the best position for them. While it is great to have an on the cusp player, especially with the fact that the draft is just about over. They've already got just enough big first as it is. I think Kondori would be lost in the shuffle on this roster. It'd probably be better to see if another team would be interested in him. We'll see how it goes.
Yep, and the pick is in. Let's head down to the commissioner.
For the number 44 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, Bangor Tides have selected Danielle Malsberg, a guard possum from UFLA. Congratulations to you, Danielle, on being the number 44 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. It will return for the next pick once the Queen's Pride have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
They went guard, not a shocker there. Any thoughts on what you see, Donovan?
My the only thing I'm thinking at this point, beyond what we've already discussed, is um I'm a little surprised no one has picked up Fuller Filson. He had quite the showing at the combine early on. For about the first 3-4 days, he was easily running in the top 10.
You mean when
Slowed
athletics was
down
all
after
that mattered?
Yes, and I'm not saying that that is all that matters, but a lot of these teams are looking for athletic players, and he's still sitting there.
You
I'm a
can't,
little surprised by that.
I was gonna say you can't teach being fast. You can teach a lot of other things, but you can't teach some physical aspects. Sure, a player can be dedicated and build their body to be the best possible it can be, So that is a project player that you would expect to see maybe taken here near the end of the draft. And the Queens might be looking at him. I mean, they have 2 more picks left. The Queen's Pride,
True.
hoarder of picks.
Well, need to hoard picks when you have as many openings on your roster.
Eh, I mean, if you have 5 picks, you could technically build a starting lineup out of that.
Yeah, that would be an interesting season.
It would be a very, very raw team, if anything. But we've seen them pick 2 guards in round 1. And then they picked uh, the center forward, Jason Hartford. So we have seen them actually take a big. They don't necessarily have to take another big here, but it is potentially advisable to take Condori for everyone's safety and sake. But
Who knows?
I mean, they honestly, since they took 2 guards earlier, I would not be surprised if they took Zatara, just because they don't need another guard at this point. They could probably go for the forward or Condori, either or here. They have a final pick in the draft at 48. It's probable that both of them will not be there, but it's not the end of the world if they only get one of those 2. Again, these players probably won't see significant minutes unless
It's true.
The-
Unless something
the free agency just goes
traumatic
terribly
happens.
wrong. Which it could. Free agency could go absolutely disastrously. But we're going to cut to the commissioner. I think he has the pick in hand.
Oh, the 45th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. The Queen's Pride have selected Maggie Loxley, guard Ladybug from Heritage River Riparian College. Congratulations to you, Maggie, on being the 45th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. Return once the Biloxi Voodoo have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, the Pride like their guards, apparently, is what I'm taking away from this.
It would seem.
So, another one off the board. That leaves 4 guards, a forward, and a center left to round out the rest of this draft. And now it's BLV on the clock. A team that, for the most part, is locked up, except for their center Sterling and Vilcasitis in free agency. They have a decent amount of cap they can afford to spend between the 2 of them. It's really about rounding out the rest of their bench. And considering they traded for both Lucas and Stone, I have to imagine they go guard here just because they already acquired 2 bigs through a trade.
And that seems likely. I am curious to see what they do.
Yep, and we only have 3 picks left to go in this draft, so definitely keeping my eyes on, how the next team after this is Dakota, who not necessarily we already saw them just pick 1 player relatively quickly, so I wouldn't be surprised if they go with guard on the next pick. So we could see Condori not get picked up, and that would be an absolute shock.
It would.
But if we had to go with it, though, how do you think which guard, if they go guard here, which guard do they go for?
I mean, like I said before, I think at this point it really just comes down to who stood out to you most in your interviews. No matter who you're taking on here, you're taking on a project player, so it's the one that you feel most comfortable about taking on.
Especially considering we don't even know if Ron Malone will be returning for a 19th season. You have to imagine a guard here would make the most sense. They do go out and offer the old Rue another year. Maybe try and capture Magic one more time in a bottle. He definitely had some serious impact in the finals
He did. At the same time, you almost wonder if he just wants to leave on that note. Wouldn't that be a nice, clean ending?
Mm-hmm. As we wait for the pick to come in, time starting to wind down. We are almost there, though. Almost to the end. We can make it through this rest of the draft. It's been a long 2 days here. It's been a long week leading up to it, even
It
in the
really has.
combine. Reigning champs have a few holes definitely to fill. And the question is, how much does the ring cost them now? The fact that every player on their team has a ring. And there's a bit of a tax that comes with a player having a ring.
Yeah.
You have to imagine River. They have to be concerned about potentially
Oh,
renegotiating after having now won 2 times, back-to-back years, pulled down the MVP for the series,
yeah.
and only
Talk
being
about a
paid $8 million
tax.
next year. So easily worth double that based off his performance the past 2 seasons. While we wait for the pick to come in, the pick has come in as I was about to try filling for more time.
For the number 46 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Biloxi Voodoo have selected Fuller Filson, point guard cat from Philadelphia Institute of Science and Technology. Congratulations to Fuller on being the number 46 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. A return for the next pick when the Dakota Bikers have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, finally got the pick in. Was starting to worry about we might see a pass tonight, but nope. They end up picking Fuller Filson or Phil Fullerson, whoever that is.
Fuller Filson. I believe Phil Fullerton was a draft candidate last year.
The
It's a
dog.
strange
This one's the
coincidence.
cat.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, like I said, the cat definitely stood out in the early goings of the combine. So we'll have to see if, even if it's just filling some really deep depth roles, if that athleticism can come into play, and if he can develop a bit more of a consistent shooting and/or skill set as a point guard,
Right.
learning behind Derek Kim. But let's jump on over to Dakota, who has the second to last pick in the draft. Now, they already made a selection of, let's see, the forward Tindua. So they have the Panther. They have a forward still on the board. They could go with another one if they really wanted to.
They could.
Or they could go for the center.
No one wants the center. I swear there's a story here, and I am very curious what it is.
Maybe his name got left off the board for everyone of eligible draftees and no one's realized. Find out tomorrow. It's like, oh yeah, that guy.
Oh, there was a top 24 center still available? How weird. I didn't know about that.
And I think the pick is in for the Dakota Bikers. Let's jump down to the commissioner.
For the number 47 pick of the 2021 FBA Draft, the Dakota Bikers have selected David Cartwright, a guard snowy owl from Ursa State University. Congratulations to you, David, on being the 47th pick of the 2021 FBA Draft. A return for the final pick once the Queen's Pride have confirmed their selection. Thank you.
Well, they went with another guard to back up last year's, I guess, guard selection of Neo Snyman.
Who worked out quite well for them.
Yeah, he's been a solid backup to Silvius when he had to sit out a few games due to an injury. But this pick, I guess, might be replacing Ricardo Rodriguez, who's going into free agency, who's kind of... The Lion has slipped in terms of his efficiency as a shooter, so maybe trying to bring in a guard to replace him. But let's jump into Queens, the final pick of the FBA draft belongs to them.
And
They
they've passed over Condori multiple times now. I can't imagine they take it now.
well,
Take him.
I mean that would be ironic if it's the 48th pick and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Finally, we
Actually, no,
agree."
maybe we will take you. I feel like I would be slightly confused, if not insulted, if that were me.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's there are concerns about what's going on that I think we all kind of want to have answered, but it's not the end of the world. There's still unrestricted free agency, or sorry, restricted free agency for any player not picked,
It's
and
true.
D League as well. So it's not the worst thing that could happen to a player not being picked. Again, we talked about it before. Yves, Marcus Knight, Lance Wildfire, three players, all stars, who started their careers undrafted and developed into be some of the best players in the league. So I do have to say though, if it is not Condori, it has to be Zatara. Queens have been heavy on the guards this draft. I mean, the only non-guard they've selected was Hartford, and they had their guard from last year. So it's uh, a concern to me if they don't go there. If they do go there
It's
again, I should say. But I see the commissioner is ready for the final pick, the last one of the 2021 FBA draft. Let's cut down to the stage.
So this is a real pick. Certain about that. Jim. Oh, okay. Thank you. For the last pick of the 2021 FBA draft, Queen's Pride have selected Old Jim Shorts, a forward article of clothing. Who said his name was Jim? That's a cruel trick. You already know I'm already on higher blood pressure. Ugh. This is the real one. Pardon me, esteemed guests. It seems that we have an ongoing prank for year after year after year. I think next year I will just play along. But anyways, the final pick, the true final pick of the 2021 FBA draft. Queen's Pride selected Keisha Zatara, power forward McCaw from Calford Tech. Congratulations to you, Keisha, for being the last pick of the 2021 FBA draft. And congratulations to all 48 individuals who have been selected these last few days. To those who have not been selected, I say, do not give up hope. There's still plenty of places for you here in the FBA. I'm certain that you will be contacted soon by a team who needs your skills and determination to help fill out their rosters. Thank you all for coming this weekend to Las Vegas. We wish you all best in your careers as basketball players, and I look forward to seeing all of you on the court very soon. Thank you.
Well, besides the shenanigans, we have the final pick in the FBA draft, Keisha Zatara. They did go forward. They did not pick a
Another
fourth
guard.
guard for the draft. So they went where I was thankfully expected, even though a little undersized, so probably a small forward role. However, that does mean Condori did not get selected here. and we'll
And
have to,
from what I hear, he has already stormed out of the building.
yeah, we'll have to see in terms of where we go from here in terms of the unrestricted or restricted, not unrestricted, restricted free agent offerings, because that is a slight benefit of being a restricted free agent. You have your pick of who you go to as long as you get more than one offer. So if the team offers them a contract and it looks like they won't even see a minute of playtime, they might have the ability to pick a team that has a higher opportunity to develop into a more consistent player in terms of minutes. So we'll have to see how the three undrafted players go. Any thoughts before we sign off for the night, Donovan?
No, I'm curious to see how the season progresses from here. This was a strange draft with some real surprises, and I'm curious to see what that means for the season ahead.
Yeah, I 100% agree in that regard. And uh, wanted to go ahead and just say good night, everyone. I've been Ryan Eastman. Thank you, Donovan, for joining me. Thank you, Jeremiah, and thank you, Marcus. And we'll have some final words from our commissioner before we shut everything down.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for day 2 of the draft. As said before, if your player wasn't drafted, there are still chances for that to happen. So great. Otherwise, we appreciate everyone coming out these last couple of days. We appreciate everyone's involvement in this year's draft. Thank you again to Faded Kit, Jay Wolf, and Xenos for lending their vocal talents this evening as well. And I won't keep you guys, so thanks again. Please keep your eye out on announcements. We understand that because of the truncated off season, some of the schedule is still a little wonky. So we'll be very clear on what dates happen when. The schedule will also be out very, very quickly from probably in the next 24 hours. So you can kind of see where your schedules are going to lie. And other than that, yeah, just keep watching the announcements on Discord and on Twitter. And we'll make sure that everyone kind of knows what's happening between now and the 31st when we kick off the season with Halloween. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
And thank you all again for tuning in. We will see you next time for the, I think, broadcast will be the Halloween Sports Den. So make sure you